Today's episode is brought to you by Forvis Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. The cash flow challenge is worsening, and it's being caused by widespread overdue payments. CEO and founder of Grow Capital, Gus Gilkeson, has some suggestions and proactive strategies to manage late payments and outstanding debts. Gus explains to Jeff Waters how Grow Capital has come to these conclusions.
We've been funding businesses in Australia for the last 25 years. And I think it is, from what we are seeing, we deal with mainly SME middle market clients, so family-owned unlisted businesses predominantly, and we've seen a marked rise in requirement for cash flow funding, which is generally an indicator of non-payment or late payment. So, I think it is a rise. We're hearing it anecdotally also around the market from all of our clients and just generally in the business community. So, I think there's a lot of cash flow pressure on Australian businesses and families. The cost of living has risen significantly with inflation. You've got interest rates that have increased markedly. You've got the cost of food and electricity and all of those things. So all of those have a flow-on effect in terms of inputs to a cash flow or a budget. And so what we're seeing is, and then the ATO is obviously collecting money from businesses at a rapid rate of knots. So all of those things add up to strain on business cash flow.
Is this a problem with consumer debt, or is it something that is happening between businesses?
I think it's both. So I think, families are under strain, so they're not spending where they don't have to, which means, they're not taking the extra holiday or the extra week of holidays. They're buying the sausages instead of the steak at the butchery. So that then has a business impact that business is, needs to pay its suppliers, but it hasn't got the turnover that it would have had, 6 or 12 months ago. So I think it's both is the answer to your question. We're seeing businesses that haven't ever borrowed money in, 30 plus years. More than one of them in the last couple of months have come to us and said, we've never borrowed before, but we need to borrow because people aren't paying us.
That's cash flow in general, but I suppose I'm specifically asking about unrecovered debt that is causing a trouble.
Yes, so it's unexpected. So I think a lack of communication is a big thing that we're seeing in business-to-business transactions. So businesses are not paying, but they're actually not communicating that to someone that they owe money to. So, if I'm a small business, someone owes me money, you expect it to be paid 30 days, end of month. It's just not turning up. And so then if that's never happened to you before in business, you may not have the skill set to have that conversation with the person that owes you money. So, it doesn't turn up a week for another week. And then all of a sudden you're on the phone saying, hey, just, checking that you got my invoice. And perhaps, that may need to be to recover that debt may need to be a bit more proactive than something like that. So we're seeing a bit of that at the moment where businesses are unexpectedly not being paid and they're having conversations late in the piece, and they're fairly general conversations rather than, did you receive my invoice? Yes, great. Could you tell me when I can expect payment from that? It's now overdue, that type of thing.
So you're saying that proper communication between the payer and the payee will help solve the problem, or at least open those channels toward a possible solution. But are there any other things that small businesses that are listening could do to recover money that's owed to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the really key points are when you're setting up your terms of trade with your clients, you need to have something in that agreement. So some of the actions that you may need to take down the track, if someone just decides not to pay you, for example, if you want to register them with a credit bureau to say that they're late payers, you can't do that without having that in an agreement in a lot of cases in a lot of states in Australia. So you need to have that in your terms of trade or in your agreement that you have with your clients. So that's one of the things. And then you'd also need to think about, or the businesses need to think about, can that client that's not paying, is it they can't pay you or they just don't want to pay you? Or is it a bit of both? And so if they physically can't pay you, then that may just be a conversation around what can we do to help you get through your cash flow challenge and help us out at the same time. So maybe it might be giving them some extended payment terms or something like that. But the communication really needs to be flowing fairly effectively, and you may also want them to give you some form of proof of that, and explain to you how that's happened. If they just don't want to pay, then that's a very different thing, and we've seen that quite a bit as well, where some businesses are taking advantage of these conditions to just not pay where they owe money, but they can actually pay. And so if that's happening to you, then really what you're looking to do is to expedite that process. And then you want to be considering whether you want to deal with those parties again. So, and that's where your communication follow-up needs to be documented. There needs to be clear emails, correspondence by phone, all of that type of stuff, and some file notes. And then you have rights to go to, small claims tribunals and use the legal framework. There's a framework around that for legal debt recovery.
That whole scene, though, is very daunting for somebody who's just trying to run a small business and get on with life, but needs to recover this money. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it is. And we've got a little mud map that we can probably share with your listeners, if you like, Jeff, to just give you a sort of process, tick box process. But it is daunting. I think the biggest thing is if you're owed money and you've provided a service, then it's your money. So what you're really doing is effectively giving credit to your clients. And it's not unreasonable for you to expect to be paid if you've delivered the work or the service or the product or the good. It's not unreasonable. So I think engaging a professional, if it's too much, if you're not comfortable with that as a small business, then there are professionals in the industry, that collections agencies that do this type of stuff, and they do it efficiently, and they will work with you on how you want to treat the client. So they will ask you, do you want to deal with this client again? How aggressive do you want to be with collecting this money? Or is it just we want to formalise a process? We've agreed, that rather than pay at the end of this month, they're going to pay a third over the next 3 months. And we just want to document that so it's in a formal documentation. They'll work with you on that front as well. And generally they'll just charge a percentage. A good recovery firm or collections firm will just charge a percentage on funds that they recover. So, that might be 5 or 10% or whatever it is of the funds that they're recovering for you. If you equate that to your time input, it's actually not a huge amount of money. If you look at how long you could spend, sending emails, chasing, going, trying to collect the money yourself and go through that process when you don't have the skill set.
A lot of this money owed might be in small amounts, though, that don't really justify bringing in other companies or going to court. What should I do if that's the case?
Yeah, good question. So if you, for example, if you had a dog walking business and your average invoice size is, $40 or $50 or $60, the great thing is there's technology these days that does these processes for you and provides the formal letters that you need. So you can look at that specific process, look at the map, and then the actual templated letters that you can send out, you can get those from platforms such as lawpath.com.au. That's a very cost-efficient legal framework that provides you templates, legal letters, that type of stuff. And there's also collections apps and technology providers that basically you could batch download to those apps and they'll do the process for you as well. So very cost-efficient, and particularly where you've got a large number of outstanding debts and you need to contact them simultaneously. So they'll integrate with your email frameworks and that type of stuff as well.
That was Gus Gilkeson, CEO of Grow Capital. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Forvis Mazars. To find out more, visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.